the most wanted being in the galaxy. Zephron was a legend in the criminal underworld. His name was whispered in trading posts across 1,000 worlds, spoken with equal parts fear and admiration. He was a void walker, a species blessed with the ability to phase through solid matter, making him the perfect thief. For 20 years, he had stolen from the most secure vaults in the Galactic Federation, taking treasures that were supposed to be impossible to steal. He had stolen the crown jewels of Altair from a vault protected by quantum locks. He had taken the sacred crystals of the Luminari from a temple guarded by warrior monks. He had even managed to steal a prototype starship engine from a military research facility that was supposedly impenetrable. Each theft added to his reputation, making him more feared and more wanted. The Galactic Security Council had placed a bounty on his head worth more credits than most planets generated in a year. Every bounty hunter, mercenary, and law enforcement agency was looking for him, but Zephron was careful. He never stayed in one place long. He never left evidence. He never got caught. The perfect score. Zephron sat in a dingy bar on the edge of Federation space, studying his latest target on a holographic display. The Meridian Diamond was the largest and most valuable gem in known space, worth enough to buy entire solar systems. It was currently held in the Central Federation Treasury on the capital world of Nexus Prime, protected by security systems designed by the best minds in the galaxy. It was, by every measure, impossible to steal, which was exactly why Zephron wanted it. He had spent 6 months planning this job. He knew every guard rotation, every sensor placement, every security protocol. He had bribed officials, planted false information, and created elaborate contingency plans. This would be his masterpiece, the theft that would cement his place in history. "You planning something big?" a voice asked beside him. Zephron looked up to see a human sitting on the next bar stool. Humans were relatively new to the Federation, admitted only 50 years ago. They were considered average by galactic standards, not particularly strong or smart or talented, just adequate. This human was unremarkable. Average height, brown hair, wearing simple clothes that looked well-worn. Nothing about him suggested he was anyone important or dangerous. "Just enjoy my drink," Zephron said carefully. He never discussed his work with strangers. The human smiled. "My name is Marcus Chun. I work as a cargo hauler. Boring job, but it pays the bills." He ordered a drink and sat back. "You know what I find interesting about this galaxy? Everyone is so focused on getting more. More wealth, more power, more status. Like it will make them happy." Zephron studied the human with new interest. "And you think that is wrong?" Marcus shrugged. "I think happiness does not come from what you have. It comes from what you give away." A philosophy that made no sense. Zephron laughed. "That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. If you give everything away, you have nothing left." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but I have traveled to a lot of worlds, met a lot of species. The happiest people I have met are not the richest ones. They are the ones who help others, who share what they have, who make other lives better." Zephron shook his head. This human clearly did not understand how the universe worked. Wealth was power. Power was security. Security was survival. Taking what you needed was simply logical. "Let me tell you something," Zephron said. "I have seen every corner of this galaxy. I have been to worlds where beings live in luxury beyond imagination. They are happy. Trust me." Marcus smiled sadly. "Are they? Or are they just comfortable? There's a difference." Before Zephron could respond, alarms blared throughout the bar. Security forces were conducting a random sweep, checking identification and scanning for wanted criminals. Zephron cursed under his breath. He could phase through walls to escape, but that would reveal his identity and draw attention. Marcus stood calmly. "Come with me. I know a way out." Zephron had no better options, so he followed. Marcus led him to the back of the bar, down a service corridor, and out through a maintenance exit that the security forces had not covered. Within minutes, they were safely away. "Why did you help me?" Zephron asked, suspicious. Marcus smiled. "Because you needed help. That is what humans do." The heist begins. 3 days later, Zephron arrived on Nexus Prime. He had stolen a cargo hauler's identity and credentials, allowing him to land without triggering security alerts. The Central Federation Treasury was located in the heart of the capital city, a massive structure of metal and energy shields. Zephron spent 2 days conducting final reconnaissance, confirming that his information was accurate. Everything was in place. Tonight, he would make history. He approached the Treasury at midnight, when the security rotation changed, and there was a brief window of reduced coverage. Using his phasing ability, he passed through the outer walls like they were not there. The security sensors could not detect him when he was phased, making him essentially invisible. He moved through corridor after corridor, avoiding guard patrols and camera systems. The layout matched his intelligence perfectly. Within 30 minutes, he reached the central vault where the Meridian Diamond was kept. The vault was a masterpiece of security engineering. Quantum locks, biometric scanners, gravitational sensors, and energy fields all protected the diamond. But Zephron had planned for everything. He disabled systems one by one, using techniques he had perfected over decades of theft. Finally, the vault door opened. Inside, sitting on a pedestal of pure light, was a Meridian Diamond. It was even more beautiful than the images suggested, catching the light and refracting it into a rainbow of colors that seemed to fill the room. Zephron reached out to take it. This was the moment, the perfect theft, the score that would make him the most successful thief in galactic history. "I would not do that if I were you," a familiar voice said behind him. Zephron spun around. Marcus Chin stood in the vault entrance, wearing not a cargo hauler's clothes, but the uniform of Federation Security Inspector. The human smiled sadly. "You," Zephron said, feeling betrayed. "You were hunting me this whole time?" Marcus shook his head. "No, I was trying to save you." The truth about Marcus. "I am not just a security inspector," Marcus explained, his voice gentle. "I am part of a special unit that tracks major criminals. We have been watching you for 3 years, Zephron. We knew you would eventually try for the Meridian Diamond. It was too perfect a target for you to resist." Zephron's mind raced, calculating escape routes. He could phase through the floor, disappear into the structure below. But something in Marcus's expression made him pause. "So arrest me," Zephron said. "Collect your bounty. Become a hero." Marcus sighed. "I do not want to arrest you, Zephron. I want to understand you. You are one of the most talented beings I have ever encountered. Your abilities, your intelligence, your planning skills are extraordinary, but you use them all for theft. Why?" The question caught Zephron off guard. No one had ever asked him that before. They assumed he stole for wealth or greed or excitement. But the truth was more complicated. "Because I am good at it," Zephron said finally. "Because it is what I know how to do." Marcus stepped closer, and Zephron noticed the human was unarmed. He could easily overpower Marcus and escape. But something made him stay and listen. "Let me tell you a story," Marcus said. 30 years ago, I was a thief too. Not as talented as you, but good enough. I stole to survive. Then I stole to get comfortable. Then I stole because I did not know how to do anything else. I thought taking from others was just how the universe worked." Zephron stared at him. "What changed?" "I got caught," Marcus said with a sad smile. "I was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but the judge offered me a choice. I could serve my time, or I could spend those 20 years working with a rehabilitation program, learning to help people instead of stealing from them." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "I thought it was stupid. Why would I want to help people who never helped me? But I had no other choice, so I agreed. And slowly, something changed. I discovered that helping someone, really helping them, made me feel better than any theft ever had. I learned that giving creates more happiness than taking ever could. An impossible choice." Zephron wanted to dismiss Marcus's story as naive human foolishness. But he could not ignore the fact that Marcus had tracked him successfully, had anticipated his every move, had caught him in the act of his greatest theft. This human was not foolish. "So what now?" Zephron asked. "You expect me to suddenly become a good person? Give up everything I am?" Marcus shook his head. "I expect you to make a choice. I can arrest you right now. You will spend the rest of your life in a maximum security prison designed specifically to hold beings with phasing abilities. Your legend will end in a cell. He stepped aside, leaving the path to the diamond clear. Or you can take the diamond, leave here, and continue your life as a thief. I will not stop you. Zephron could not believe what he was hearing. Why would you let me go? Because I want you to choose, Marcus said simply. Not because you are caught, not because you have no other option, but because you want to. If you take that diamond, you are choosing to continue as a thief. But if you walk away, you are choosing something different, something harder but better. Zephron looked at the Meridian diamond. It represented everything he had worked for, everything he was. Taking it would cement his legend forever. He would be the greatest thief in galactic history. But he would also be a thief. Nothing more. Forever defined by what he took from others rather than what he gave. What would happen if I walked away? Zephron asked quietly. Marcus smiled. Then we talk. You would face justice for your past crimes. Yes. But I would testify that you chose to stop, that you recognized there was a better path. The courts would consider that. And after, there are programs, opportunities for beings with your skills to help rather than harm. Programs run by naive humans who think giving is better than taking, Zephron said, but there was less edge to his voice. Programs run by beings who learned that lesson the hard way. Marcus corrected gently. Some of them were thieves like you. Some were worse. But they all discovered that true wealth is not measured in credits or jewels. It is measured in lives you improve, people you help, good you create in the universe. Zephron stood there for a long moment, staring at the diamond. Every instinct told him to take it and run, to escape and continue his life as the galaxy's greatest thief. But a small voice, one he had been ignoring for years, whispered that maybe, just maybe, the human was right. The hardest choice. Zephron reached out toward the diamond. Marcus did not move, did not try to stop him. Zephron's fingers were centimeters away from the perfect gem when he stopped. He thought about his life. 20 years of running, hiding, always looking over his shoulder. 20 years of brief highs after successful thefts, followed by emptiness. 20 years of being alone because he could never trust anyone, never let anyone close. He thought about Marcus's words. About happiness coming from what you give away rather than what you take. It sounded impossible, contradicted everything he had learned. But Marcus had been a thief too. Marcus understood. And Marcus had chosen differently. Slowly, Zephron lowered his hand. He stepped back from the diamond. I choose to walk away, he said quietly. Marcus's smile was genuine and warm. That took more courage than any theft you have ever accomplished. Security forces arrived moments later, summoned by Marcus's signal. They placed suppression cuffs on Zephron that prevented him from using his phasing ability. He was officially under arrest for countless crimes across the galaxy. But as they led him away, Zephron felt something unexpected. Not regret, not anger, but relief. For the first time in 20 years, he was not running. He was facing his choices and accepting their consequences. And somehow, that felt more freeing than any successful theft had ever been. Part 2, The Path of Redemption. Learning to Give. The trial lasted 3 months. Zephron faced charges from 17 different planetary governments, each one representing years of theft and deception. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The defense had little to work with except Marcus's testimony that Zephron had chosen to stop. The judges deliberated for 2 weeks. When they returned with their verdict, Zephron stood to hear his fate. He was found guilty of all charges, sentenced to 30 years in prison. But the sentence came with a condition. He could serve his time in traditional confinement, or he could participate in the rehabilitation and restitution program that Marcus had described. Zephron chose the program. He was assigned to work with disaster relief teams across the Federation. His phasing ability, which he'd used to steal for 2 decades, would now be used to save lives. He could phase through collapsed buildings to reach trapped victims, pass through toxic environments to deliver supplies, access areas that were impossible for others to reach. The first assignment was brutal. A massive earthquake had devastated a colony world in the Outer Rim. Thousands were trapped under rubble, and conventional rescue methods were too slow. Zephron's team arrived with emergency equipment and medical supplies. "Your job is simple," Marcus explained. He had volunteered to supervise Zephron's initial assignments. Phase into collapsed structures, locate survivors, mark their positions so rescue teams can extract them safely. Save as many lives as possible. Zephron descended into the ruins of a collapsed apartment complex. He phased through twisted metal and broken concrete, moving through the destruction like a ghost. In the darkness, he heard sounds. Crying, calling for help, prayers in languages he did not speak. He found a family trapped in an air pocket 3 stories down. A mother protecting 2 young children, all of them injured and terrified. Zephron marked their location and moved on, finding more survivors, more people who would die without help. The rescue took 48 hours. Zephron worked without sleep, phasing through structure after structure, finding the trapped and guiding rescuers to them. His body ached from exhaustion. His phasing ability was pushed to its limits, but he kept going because people were depending on him. When it was over, they had saved 347 lives. The colony's governor thanked the rescue team personally, tears in his eyes as he grasped Zephron's hand. "You saved my daughter," the governor said quietly. "She was trapped in her school. Without you, we would never have found her in time. Thank you." Zephron did not know what to say. No one had ever thanked him before. In his life as a thief, gratitude was foreign. But standing there, looking at the governor's genuine appreciation, feeling the weight of knowing his actions had saved a child's life, something shifted inside him. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. "How does it feel?" "Exhausting," Zephron admitted. "Painful. Difficult." He paused, searching for words. "But also right. Like maybe this is what I should have been doing all along, facing his victims." The rehabilitation program was not just about using his skills to help. It also required Zephron to face the consequences of his past actions. Over the following months, he was brought before victims of his thefts, people whose lives he had impacted with his crimes. The first meeting was with the Luminari whose sacred crystals he had stolen. They were a spiritual species, deeply connected to their religious artifacts. Zephron had studied them as targets, learning their security systems and weaknesses. He had never considered them as people with feelings and beliefs. The high priest of the Luminari temple sat across from him in a mediation chamber. "Do you understand what you took from us?" the priest asked, his voice heavy with sadness. Zephron had rehearsed apologies, prepared statements. But facing the priest's grief-filled eyes, all the prepared words fell hollow. "I took your sacred crystals. I know they were valuable." Valuable? The priest's expression was pained. They were our connection to our ancestors, our link to the divine. They held the crystallized wisdom of 10,000 years. When you stole them, you did not just take valuable objects. You severed our people from their spiritual heritage. The weight of that statement hit Zephron like a physical blow. He had spent weeks planning that theft, celebrating its success, selling the crystals to a collector who saw them only as rare artifacts. He had never once considered what they truly meant. The crystals were recovered eventually, the priest continued, but they had been handled by those who did not understand their sacred nature, stored improperly, damaged by ignorance. We got them back, but they were changed, diminished. Zephron felt shame in a way he had never experienced. "I am sorry," he said, and he meant it. "I cannot undo what I did. I cannot restore what was lost. But I am sorry." The priest studied him for a long moment. Apology is a beginning, but redemption requires more than words. It requires change, action, proof that you have become someone different. Making amends. Over the next year, Zephron worked on dozens of disaster relief missions. He saved lives in earthquakes, floods, fires, and industrial accidents. He used his phasing ability to reach the unreachable, help the helpless, give hope to the desperate. But Marcus pushed him further. "Saving lives is important," the human explained. "But redemption also means making amends to those you hurt. Your victims deserve restitution." Zephron had stolen treasures worth billions of credits over his career. Most had been sold or traded, scattered across the galaxy. Recovering them would be impossible. But Marcus had a different idea. "You know the criminal underworld better than anyone," Marcus said. "You know how smuggling networks operate, where stolen goods are fenced, who the major players are. Use that knowledge to help us recover stolen artifacts and return them to their rightful owners." Zephron became a consultant for Federation security, helping them track down thieves and smugglers. He provided intelligence that led to the recovery of hundreds of stolen items. It was strange, working on the other side of the law, but it felt right in ways his thefts never had. One mission brought him back to Altair, where he had stolen the crown jewels years earlier. The royal family had never recovered the complete collection. 3 pieces remained missing, scattered among private collectors. Zephron used his old contacts to trace the missing jewels. It took 3 months, but he eventually located all 3 pieces. The Federation negotiated their return, and Zephron personally delivered them to the Altair Royal Palace. The Queen of Altair met him in the throne room. She was elderly, her crystalline wings dimmed with age. "You are the one who stole these from us," she said. Not a question, but a statement. "Yes, Your Majesty," Zephron admitted, "and I am the one returning them. It does not undo my crime, but I hope it helps." The Queen studied him carefully. "You know what the crown jewels represent? They are not just valuable objects. They are symbols of our culture's continuity, passed down through 300 generations. When you took them, you broke that chain." Zephron bowed his head. "I did not understand that then. I saw only value, not meaning. I was wrong." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She placed one of her aged hands on Zephron's shoulder. "The fact that you can admit that you understand the harm you caused suggests you have changed. True nobility is not found in never making mistakes. It is found in having the courage to make things right. A new purpose." 3 years into his rehabilitation, Zephron had become someone completely different from the legendary thief. He had saved over 1,000 lives in disaster relief work. He had helped recover countless stolen artifacts. He had faced his victims, apologized, and tried to make amends. Marcus visited him regularly, monitoring his progress. During one meeting, the human smiled and said, "You have exceeded every expectation. The Federation Security Council is prepared to recommend early completion of your rehabilitation." Zephron was surprised. "Early completion? I have served only 3 years of my 30-year sentence." "You have done more good in 3 years than many beings do in a lifetime," Marcus explained. "You have proven that you have changed, that you are committed to helping rather than harming. The Council believes you have earned a second chance at freedom." Freedom. Zephron had once thought freedom meant the ability to go anywhere, take anything, answer to no one. But he had learned a different kind of freedom. The freedom that came from living without guilt, from knowing his actions help rather than hurt, from sleeping without fear capture. "If I am released," Zephron asked, "what would I do?" Marcus smiled. "That is up to you. But I have a suggestion. The disaster relief program needs experienced team leaders. Beings who understand how to use unique abilities to save lives. You could train others, lead missions, continue the work you've been doing." Zephron thought about that. He could return to his old life, use his skills for profit, but the idea made him feel empty. Or he could continue this new path, use his abilities to help people who needed it. "I would like to continue the work," Zephron said. "If they will have me." "They will," Marcus assured him. "You have earned that opportunity." The true wealth. 5 years after his trial, Zephron stood on a disaster site on a remote colony world. A fire had swept through the settlement, destroying homes and trapping families. His team had arrived within hours, and Zephron was organizing the rescue efforts. He had a crew of 8 beings from different species, each one with unique abilities that made them valuable for rescue work. They looked to him for guidance, trusted his experience and judgment. He was their leader, responsible for their safety and their success. Zephron, one of his team members, called. "We have located a family in the basement of Building 7. 3 adults, 2 children. Structural integrity is failing. We need you to phase in and mark the safest extraction point." Zephron nodded and moved toward the building. The structure was engulfed in flames, heat radiating in waves that made the air shimmer. He phased to the burning walls, feeling the temperature even in his phased state. In the basement, he found the family huddled together, terrified and injured. He materialized briefly to speak to them. "Help is here. Stay calm. We will get you out." The children looked up at him with hope in their eyes, and Zephron felt that familiar warmth he had come to recognize. This was what wealth truly meant, not credits or jewels, but the knowledge that his existence made the universe better. He marked the extraction point and phased back out. His team went to work, carefully cutting through the structure to reach the family. Within 30 minutes, all 5 were safely evacuated, receiving medical treatment. The father approached Zephron afterward, his eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. You saved my family. I do not know how to repay you." Zephron smiled. "You do not need to repay me. Just help someone else when you get the chance. That is how it works." Teaching others. Marcus visited the disaster site the next day, reviewing the rescue operation. He found Zephron training 2 new team members, teaching them how to coordinate abilities and maximize efficiency. "You are good at this," Marcus observed. "Teaching, leading. You have found your calling." Zephron looked at his team, at the colony they had helped save, at the lives they had protected. "You were right, back in that vault, when you said giving creates more happiness than taking. I thought you were crazy." Marcus laughed. "I remember. You called it the stupidest thing you had ever heard." "I was wrong," Zephron admitted. "Taking gives you temporary pleasure, but it leaves you empty. Giving, helping, making a real difference in someone's life, that creates something lasting. I understand that now." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the colony begin rebuilding. The destruction from the fire was extensive, but the community was working together, supporting each other, healing. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said. "The Federation Security Council has officially completed your rehabilitation. You are no longer under any legal restrictions. You are free." Zephron processed that information. After everything, he was truly free. He could go anywhere, do anything, and if I choose to stay with the disaster relief program, then you'll be doing it by choice, not because you're required to, Marcus said. "That makes all the difference." Zephron thought about his options. He could return to a life of taking, using his abilities for personal gain. But that path no longer held any appeal. He had discovered something more valuable than all the treasures he had ever stolen. "I choose to stay," Zephron said. "This work, helping people, leading rescue missions, training others to use their abilities for good, this is what I want to do." Marcus smiled warmly. "Then welcome to the team, not as a criminal serving a sentence, but as a valued member making a difference." The greatest theft and the greatest gift. Years later, Zephron became one of the most respected disaster relief coordinators in the Federation. He led hundreds of missions, saved thousands of lives, and trained dozens of beings to use their unique abilities for rescue work. He occasionally received messages from people he had helped, families whose lives he had saved, communities he had protected, beings who were alive because of his actions. Each message reminded him that he had made the right choice. One day, he received an invitation to speak at the Federation Academy, where young beings were training for various service careers. He stood before an audience of hundreds and told his story. "I was the most wanted thief in the galaxy," he began. "I stole treasures worth billions. I was legendary, feared, and alone. I thought taking from others made me powerful, made me successful." He paused, looking at the young faces watching him. "Then I met a human who taught me something that changed everything. He taught me that true wealth is not what you take, but what you give. That happiness comes from helping others, not harming them. That using your abilities to save lives matters more than using them to steal treasures." A student raised her hand. "Do you ever regret giving up your old life? You were successful, wealthy, famous." Zephron smiled. "I regret the harm I caused. I regret the years I wasted taking from others. But I do not regret changing. The life I have now, helping people, making a real difference, is worth more than all the treasures I ever stole." After the speech, Marcus found him in the hallway. The human had aged, his hair now gray, but his eyes still held that same warmth and wisdom. "You spoke well," Marcus said. "I think you reached some of them." "I hope so," Zephron replied. "If even one being chooses to help rather than harm because of what I said, then it was worth it." They walked together through the academy grounds. Zephron thought about the journey that brought him here, from legendary thief to disaster relief coordinator. It had been the hardest path he could have chosen, requiring him to face his crimes, make amends, and completely rebuild his identity. But it had also been the most rewarding. He had discovered that Marcus was right. Giving did create more happiness than taking. Helping others did bring more satisfaction than any theft. And using his abilities to save lives mattered more than using them to steal treasures. "Thank you," Zephron said to Marcus, "for not arresting me that night, for giving me a choice, for showing me there was a better path." Marcus smiled. "You are the one who walked that path, Zephron. You chose to change. You did the hard work of redemption. I just showed you the door. You are the one who walked through it." They stood together watching young students train, each one learning to use their abilities for good. Somewhere among them might be another being like Zephron had been, talented but misguided, using gift for harm instead of help. But if they heard Zephron's story, if they understood that change was possible, that redemption was real, then maybe they would make better choices. Maybe they would choose to give rather than take, to help rather than harm, to build rather than steal. And that, Zephron realized, was the greatest gift he could give, not returning stolen treasures or saving individual lives, but showing others that it was never too late to change, never too late to choose a better path. The quantum thief had stolen from every species, but the human had given him something far more valuable than anything he had ever taken. The human had given him the chance to become someone worth being. And in the end, that was the greatest treasure of all.